Okay, so moving through our cat-cow for about 4 breaths, so doing about 4 rounds. And we're doing about 4 rounds just to make it a little bit easier of most flows this morning. And then when you're ready, curling the toes under and come up to your downward facing dog. And taking that high rise onto the toes, start to lift the heels away from the mat and flow forward into your high plank. And then softening the knees as you lift the hips and just floating back to your downward facing dog. So going about 4 rounds of that flow. And then when you're ready, walking the feet forward, come into your fold forward, or your fold. And hang out here for a couple of breaths. And then roll yourself up. And give the shoulders a roll at the top. And we're starting to move through 4 rounds of your sun salutation A. So I'll talk you through this first one. The arms float up and over, hinging from the hips as you fold forward and lifting halfway up. We're thinking long spine there. And step back to your high plank. Lowering down, Chaturanga Dandasana, moving through that vinyasa. As you inhale, upward dog or cobra, and as you exhale, come back to your downward facing dog. Now step or jump to the top of the mat. Lift halfway up, elongate the spine, and then folding forward with 1 breath, rise up. Arms reach overhead, and then folding straight down, and moving through another 3 rounds. Okay, then moving through sun salutations B, we're doing 2 rounds. So starting with Utkatasana, folding forward and then halfway lift. And step back with your left foot, float up to your low lunge, arms reach, and then as they lower, step back to your high plank and move through your vinyasa. And as you get back to downward facing dog, take your right foot up towards the sky. Step forward between the hands and come back to that low lunge. And step the left foot to the top of the mat. Utkatasana, arms reach over the head and then come down to the floor as you fold. Halfway lift, and this time step back with your right foot. Low lunge, and then releasing hands, high plank. In vinyasa, take it nice and steady. Downward facing dog, this time left foot reaches up to the sky. And step forward. And come back down to that lunge. Releasing the hands. Take the right foot to the top. Utkatasana, and then starting here, go another round on each side. And then coming up to your standing on that last round. And we're just taking one big step back and finding our goddess pose. So feet are open out to either side. And we're taking hands just to the top of the thighs and sinking the left shoulder towards the midline. And then floating across to the other side. I'll go a few rounds on each side. And just take it to that depth that feels good for the shoulder, for the upper body. Okay, then aligning up through the torso, so reaching through the crown of the head and sinking down through the tailbone, or finding a side stretch. So soften the right elbow first, left arm reaches up, and then across to the other side. And then floating up as you reach the hands over, then as you sink the hips, hands move through heart center. And grounding through the feet, so we're creating and encouraging that length up through the legs as we float up. And that sinking of the hips, keeping the knees and thighs open as you lower down. And from here, turn the toes slightly in and fold forward. Now finding Skandasana. I think we're going bending the left knee to start with. So walk the hands just in front of the left foot. And extending that right leg out and moving either extended foot, it can be grounded on the floor, or the toes can face up to the sky. Now there's lots of ways to do your Skandasana, but just making sure you can feel that stretch through the inside of that extended leg. And just finding a bind here, opening through the shoulders. And then moving across to the other side. And here, start to flow a little bit from one side to another. And see if you can keep your hips quite low. Hands can stay connected to the floor, or finding a little higher, extend the arms out to either side. And this will bring a little bit more pressure into each leg. And then as you fold forward, come back to the center and roll yourself up. We're finding warrior 2 to start. And so turning your left toes to the top of the mat, arms open out to either side. And floating back to your reverse warrior and finding that dancing warrior flow. And then forward into your extended side angle. So going into 4 rounds of that flow. And then coming back to the center, finding high skandasana, so length through the torso. And moving from one side to the other, just nice and steady. And as you fold forward and then roll up to warrior 2 on the other side. And moving through that dancing warrior flow for 4 rounds. And coming back to the center and finding your high skandasana. Lunging from one side to the other. And then bringing the hands to the floor as you fold forward. As you roll up and sweep the hands behind you, interlacing the fingers. Opening across the chest and then leading with your heart, fold yourself forward and down. And rolling back up, just step to the top of the mat. And we're coming into a balancing tree pose. Excuse me. So take your time transferring the weight over to one leg and drawing the opposite foot as low or as high as you need to, and finding that balance. And you want to try and lift as much as you can up and out of your grounded leg, of that hip, and the arms can flow to wherever they want to go. And then moving slowly over to the other side, just taking your time. And then coming out, move to the top of the mat and come down to your malasana. So staying here for a few breaths, the elbows on the inside of each knee. And we're still thinking length running up through the torso. And bring the hands behind you and gently just start to roll yourself down towards the mat. The knees are drawing into the chest and then extending up towards the sky, and finding your plow pose but keeping the legs parallel to the mat. So you want to lift up through the sit bones, through the hamstrings. Find as much length as you can through your spine, and then rounding your spine, start to roll down slowly. Now keeping the arms soft, lower the legs halfway down and move through that flow another 3 times. So sweeping the feet behind your head, lift the hips, lengthening the spine, and then rolling yourself down, softening across the chest and the shoulders. We'll move through another 2 rounds. And with the hands on top of the knees, just let the weight of the legs sink into the hands and circle the knees around. And then moving into your happy baby. And for the last couple of stretches, just moving into a twist. So it can be any twist, maybe just with one knee drawing in, the opposite leg extending. And we're finishing up the practice right here.